This is StarTalk Sports Edition, and our special topic today is the role of artificial intelligence and machine learning in sports. What is it? How's it manifesting? How's it going to change what we experience, not only as viewers, but how it might change with the athletes themselves? So, who do I have with me? Of course, my trusty co-host, Chuck Nice. Chuck.
What's happening, Neil?
Okay, you stand-up comedian and you think about sports sometimes.
Occasionally, every once in a while, I have a dream about it.
Okay, so for this we go big guns, and of course we have Gary O'Reilly. Gary, ex-footballer. What team did you play with?
Tottenham, Crystal Palace, and Brighton. So my idea is that I think about sports a lot, and occasionally I think I'm funny.
Okay, so the two of you.
But it's only me thinking I'm funny, apparently.
So that's the combination of that we need here. Very good. Well, today we have a special guest, Noah Syken. Did I pronounce that right, Noah?
Yes, Neil, you did. Perfect.
Noah, you're VP of Sports and Entertainment Partnership at not a sports company, not an equipment company, not a logo sneaker company, at IBM.
Wow.
So this is Revenge of the Nerds? What's going on? Why do you even exist? How about that?
Well, sports uses technology and data, so why not IBM?
Well, there you go.
There you go. We're done here.
Ladies and gentlemen, the show is over. Thank you all for tuning in. I think we've covered it all.
It's all about quality, not width.
Okay. Well, I just wonder, because I think we did have to run through a generation of those who had gotten wedgied and their lunch money taken by the football jocks, to let that sort of work its way under the bridge. And now we have the next generation of techies who the sports community embraces, such as yourself. What's your formal background?
I'm actually an advertising guy. I started in advertising and media, and as I came into IBM, I learned all about technology. I learned about the intersection of how do you take great technology, how do you mix it up with something that people love and they're passionate about, and tell stories. And so the mix, like I said, the mix of technology and sports is actually very natural.
So IBM needs the person who is sensitive to the technology, has the target objective with sports, but also IBM is one of the leaders in AI in this world. So they need somebody like you.
Yeah, well, look, I would.
Or at least you tell yourself that.
Well, I look at it as, sports are business enterprises. They have the same needs as every other business, right? They have to get customers. They have to please their customers. They need a great technology infrastructure. It needs to be secure so that nobody's, breaking in and doing bad things to their technology infrastructure. So sports are just businesses with a different name, and they don't call them clients. They call them fans. And so we're very tuned in to how to help businesses operate better. That's what we do in sports.
Well, Chuck and Gary think about AI all the time. Every time we have one of these shows, they're bringing it up. So I'm sure they got a million questions for you.
I'm waiting for the day that AI is thinking about me.
It already is. You just don't know it.
In fact, it just did your gig last night at the Comedy Stop.
So Noah, I think people realize in the back of their mind somewhere that IBM has a connection to sport. But I don't think they realize just how holistic and embedded you are, because it's not just tennis, it's not just golf, it's not just, we can protect your tech. You're in so many different areas of sport altogether. Can you kind of expand on where IBM has gone in and moved the game forward?
Sure. Well, our history goes back to the Olympics in the 50s and 60s. And we started just keeping track of the data with punch cards, a couple generations ago. And so
explain punch cards, please.
It's when you get really mad at a birthday card.
Well, you know, Neil, but it's those little cards that you used to get at toll booths, right? You used to slide the card in, and it has all the little holes in it. So mechanical computing, right? Taking those little punch cards and scoring the rowing contest or the fencing contest or the basketball contest in the 50s and 60s. And that just accelerated through the 80s and 90s into the digital age and the internet, right?
So Noah Syken is 90 years old. That's what he's telling us.
My gray hair, yeah.
Okay, so you guys have been. That's. I guess it's obvious in retrospect that you would be there because it is a lot of data. But I'd heard that certain Olympics among them, but Wimbledon as well. So where you guys have a focus right now? No Olympics this year.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
What's your focus?
Yeah, so in the modern age, we partner with entities like Wimbledon, the U.S. Open, the Masters, the Grammy Awards, fantasy football. So Wimbledon was canceled, but the club came up with a great idea to actually play out Wimbledon over the course of the 2 weeks and still present 4 or 5 new matches each day of the fortnight of Wimbledon. They're classic matches, but if you think about the video content of your favorite match, Borg-McEnroe 1980, broadcast standards weren't where they were today. So we actually created some custom algorithms using our AI and updated about 15 of those matches to modern day broadcast standards. So being able to actually see Bjorn Borg's hair, wow, fiber by fiber, and really bringing a modern day standard to all of that broadcast footage and presented it on Wimbledon.com. So in just a matter of 6 weeks, we turned around and created that.
What you've done there is you've given AI the chance to give us data on the Borg-McEnroe final that never existed because AI can't use the grainy old footage.
Exactly.
Oh, did you release those into the wild, or is that just something you're keeping back?
No. If you go to Wimbledon.com today, you'll actually see modern day statistics that weren't captured in 1980 that were able to be infused into that content today. So you're right on point. It's not just the video, it's all the supplemental data that we have ability to update.
But that begs the question then, since these guys cannot play any longer, could the AI take the data, the history of these matches, compile all that data, extrapolate what the outcome would be under certain conditions for a match that has never even taken place?
In fact, that's what I'm waiting for. I don't care how many strands of hair Bjorn Borg has. Show me.
Right.
Neil,
show me Bjorn
how
Borg.
dare you?
Well, no, because I see what Neil is saying. It makes great sense because here's the deal.
Invent a match.
Invent a match.
Borg versus Federer. Could we find out?
Dude,
Borg
you've got the data.
Federer. Yeah. Who would win?
The data.
What metrics are you going to need to construct a Borg versus
And you know what you
McEnroe?
can do? You could take a modern person, put him back in time, slow down their racket, the ball speed off of the wooden bamboo rackets, and just to equalize that. So that's what we want you to do. Go back now and do that, and we'll call you when you got something to report.
Oh, you guys are great. You guys should come work for us. You have all kinds of ideas.
All right.
People are always trying to match up people who never competed against each other, especially in boxing.
Yeah, it's the
this
classic,
is a pastime.
Neil, it's the classic barroom conversation.
Yes.
So, and now we have it. Now we can actually produce, but providing we set the metrics and continue as a constant in the equation, we should be able. Now I'm talking as if I know about AI. We should be able to do that.
What's an example of the kinds of data you would collect in a tennis match?
Well, so let me actually talk about the data in 2 ways. You guys are talking about 2 different aspects, right? Statistically, who's going to win that match, right? But you're also getting at who's the best player of either one of those players, and that's a more nuanced conversation because that gets into your heart and that gets into what everybody believes, right? And so we can do the statistical modeling of, who would perform better, whose speed is, whose serve is faster, who has more, less unforced errors, all that kind of structured data. We think about structured data, rows and columns of data. But then we think about unstructured data, video, language, right? Language, and that gets at the second part of the equation, not just statistically who would win, but who's the favorite in the eyes of the fans. And more we're thinking about how do we apply AI to that question? How do we get people talking about the matches, their favorite players, expressing themselves? Because at the end of the day, there's no real answer to who's the best. The best player is who you believe is the best player and who the people believe is the best player. So we think AI actually has the ability to go, we know AI has the ability to go out, listen, learn, and compile what people say about the players and actually synthesize that into a crisp, articulate point of view as to who the best player is or who would win that match if it was played today.
So you're
structured data, unstructured data, both have a role.
So you're using language as a metric and B as a way for AI to learn sport.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
To learn the fandom of sports.
Yeah.
Right.
That's it.
Also, I mean, if it can analyze language like that, Neil, imagine the coach's conversation with a player, the caddy's conversation on the tee or on the green in the Masters, which IBM are involved in. Imagine all of a sudden they can analyze that data to bring forward. Because we're looking here historically. This Borg-McEnroe thing takes place in 1980. That's historic analytics. I guarantee now Noah has spun that 180 and is looking with AI going forward in a more predictive role. Am I right, Noah?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we think about predictive statistics already. We produce keys to the match in tennis. What do you have to do? What does this player have to do under these circumstances to win this match? But we are very much looking at predictive using natural language. I talked a little bit about tennis, but in the world of fantasy football, we're using the same kind of capabilities. So we're out there reading the blogs, reading the local beat reporters, working with ESPN, and the projections that fantasy football players will get on ESPN Fantasy Football app are actually augmented through AI based on our natural language understanding of what people are saying about the players. So this notion of language is pervasive across sports, and more we're tapping into it. Think about sound right now. You have all these competitions going on with different levels of sound. In a team sport, right, if you eliminate that piped in sound, you're able to hear the interactions of the football players on the pitch, the hockey players on the ice, right? And so getting value out of that. How are those players interacting with each other? What are the coaches saying? What are productive interactions between coaches and players that lead to success versus unproductive interactions?
So now, how exactly would you be able to implement that, even from a fan perspective? Because if I'm a coach, I'm looking at the information you just cited as proprietary. I do not want you on the field listening to the communication patterns of my team, because that gives my opponents the opportunity to see inside my head. So at that point, I'm trying to punch Watson in the face.
I want to see that.
What do you say?
Chuck,
what do you
do that? There goes your cable subscription. There goes everything. There goes your.
Chuck, you're right. You're right on the right point. You know, these are the gnarly questions that the sports organizations have to sort out right now. And there's no question. I mean, go watch a hockey match tonight, one of the hockey games tonight, and you'll see they have this crowd noise and you can't hear the voices. And you know, in many cases, I suspect that's very purposeful because of the exact reasons. But a great organization who wants to compete more effectively is going to get their hands on that data. They're going to get their hands on those interactions and understand those interactions, just like a business wants to communicate with their client and understand what their clients are saying.
So what you're saying is Bill Belichick will definitely get his hands on this.
I said nothing. I'm a New York fan, but I wouldn't disagree with it.
This is the next generation of sign reading, like we saw in baseball. Yeah,
basically.
No, I know you have an IBM have a strong connection to the U.S. Open tennis.
Yeah.
Right, but there ain't nobody in the stadium, and it's a cavernous. The Arthur Ashe Arena is just a magnificent space, but it's going to be empty. Yeah. Am I wrong in knowing that you have mapped the sound of every round going through to the final? And depending on who's playing who, you can actually recreate the noise from a first round with an unranked, unseeded player winning to create that sound, that soundscape. And this game's never taken place, I don't believe, Nadal-Federer final. So you could do all of that?
Yeah, so for the past 5 years, for Wimbledon and the U.S. Open, we've been creating AI-powered highlight reels. And so what we did was we listened to the sound of the crowd. we would watch the players in terms of fist pumps, gestures of excitement or not excitement,
or
understand understand the particular position.
McEnroe would need a whole separate anger track.
He needs his own algorithm.
Yeah.
Understand, is this a break point? Is it a double fault? And we take that and analyze it all with AI and give it an excitement score to each individual point in a tennis match. But remember, part of that excitement score was driven by the audio. So Gary, as you said, we've been listening to the sounds of tennis for 5 years using AI, understanding the characteristics of a first round match versus a final match. And in this moment of need, we are enabling the organizations like the USTA to be able to turn around and actually generate that sound in their stadium. Whether they will or not is their own choice, but they have that capability now.
So you need the judges to come in to say to AI, quiet, please. Quiet, please.
Right.
to the AI. Well, a question. There's no sport like baseball with regard to statistics. And I think it's because there's so much downtime between pitches and events that the announcers have to talk about something. So
translation, it's boring. Go ahead. Go ahead.
This is the third time he's stolen second base in late innings when they're down by 3 runs.
Right.
On a Wednesday.
Right.
Wednesday. So the statistics are so rich that for every player in every event, in every situation, it seems to me AI can just create baseball games that statistically and accurately represent actual players and actual teams. Is anybody working on that?
Well, we're not, that's for sure.
Right. Well, I'll go you one.
Did he not have an attitude? He had an attitude. He copped a toot on that.
Yeah. Let me tell you something.
Yeah. I must ask you, because we always kind of end up landing on this particular spot. We can historically analyze things, we can predict to a certain extent based on history. And these are kind of facts that we have, but what we haven't got yet is understanding what's between the ears of an athlete. Has IBM actually gone into this brain learning space, or is that just too much of a leap forward right now?
Well, I think, Gary, again, I think for us at least, it comes back to language. Right. And the ability to understand language. If you were to take take Tiger Woods as an example, or take Tom Brady, take your favorite athlete, over the course of their careers, they've done how many hours of interviews, post-round interviews, pre-round interviews, games, Super Bowls,
hundreds,
that content, hundreds and hundreds. Right. And so if you can actually understand what they're saying, listen to what they're saying, decompose what they're saying, track it over time, what's the sentiment of their conversation? What kind of language do they use? I think you're going to be able to actually get a pretty good feel for their mental state over the course of time if you did that work. We're not putting, electrodes on people's heads or anything like that quite yet. Maybe other organizations are. But for us, it's really about people expressing themselves. And people will tell you what they think and what they believe if you have the right tools to be able to get at it and actually, track it over the course of time. So again, for us, language, natural language understanding, using those capabilities to understand the language of players, coaches, owners, the organizations, the fans themselves, that gives you a pretty good surrogate into the mental state of sport.
Once again, I'm going to just say, I hope you're not counting on Bill Belichick for any advancement in that area, because every single thing will just be like, yeah, well, okay.
So Noah, you're describing a brave new world, because that's a parameter space that hardly anyone is talking about. And of course, it's one of the strong points of Watson. Its facility with languages, multiple languages, and people's ability to express themselves in that language. So
interesting point, though, Neil. Are you working with it in multiple languages? Because there's a definite contextual difference between every single language, and there are things that create different meanings, even though it's the exact same thing.
But of course.
Well, we're definitely using AI in multiple different languages, and I think one of the things also to keep in mind in this time is eliminating bias from our models. Right? AI comes with the same kinds of bias potentially as the people that are creating it. So we have.
Did you just tell me that Watson is racist?
I did not.
No, you did not. And let me just say this: Watson is not racist. Okay, people. Thank you.
But just going back to the an earlier example, when we're watching a tennis match, and we're listening for crowd noise. Roger Federer's crowd noise is significantly different than the number 25 player in the world, right?
Absolutely.
And to be able to normalize that and not have Federer fans, bias the models when we're trying to equalize the AI highlight creation is really important. So that notion of debiasing AI models into the future cannot be understated.
And the point is, Chuck, not all bias is racist. That's all. There are other kinds of biases as well.
The only ones that count are, okay?
we gotta call it a break right there before we go to our next segment. I want to thank Noah Syken. Noah, Syken. Noah Syken, it's great to have you on. Good to know that IBM is still at it, still working that Watson thing, and it'll be great to get further developments in the future from you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me.
Excellent. Thanks for being on StarTalk. When we come back, we're going to further explore the role of AI in the fan experience on StarTalk. We're back. StarTalk Sports Edition. AI. It's both terrifying and exhilarating to think about what it could be for the future of sports. And we want to talk about now what might be the new emergent fan experience that exploits all the trappings of AI. And we have as our special guest, Rajiv Maheswaran. Rajiv, welcome to StarTalk.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here.
You are CEO of Syken Spectrum. And, they didn't tell me this. I really prefer the CEO of the first Spectrum. Could we swap you out? We don't do seconds here. Your background is in electrical and computer engineering, the University of Illinois. That's the place to do that sort of thing. The leaders in computer science. And what is Syken Spectrum? What do you do there?
So I think the name came up because we need to come up with a name for the company. It was like, we wanted to be the next way of seeing things, the next way of seeing things. So we were doing variants on the next way of seeing things, and we landed on Syken Spectrum because we need a name of the company. And I think in general, we basically are trying to bring AI in general to sports. It was founded by myself, a colleague of mine. We were professors at USC in the computer science department in AI.
USC, University of Southern California.
Southern California. We didn't call it AI because there was a time where AI was a bad word. Now it's a good word. And then a friend of ours named Jeff Su, and the three of us sort of started the company to bring sort of cutting edge AI to sports.
Which of you, any of your three, were athletes yourselves?
Well, it depends on who you ask. In our own
That's my line. Don't be stealing my lines.
But none of us played professionally or in college. But it was the three of us and two 19-year-olds, a 20-year-old, and a 21-year-old who sort of dropped out of school from our research lab. But that being said, I think at some point we have sort of over 30 some people in the company who played sports in college, and then several professionals.
Okay, but they're not in charge. The ones in charge are geeks. That's what you're telling me.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Thank goodness. I don't think we'd like to have it any other way.
Guys, I'm still here.
Oh, Gary, we got Gary here, former pro footballer. Okay, Gary. No, except for Gary, Chuck.
Yeah,
exactly.
Thank you.
So you are partnered. Is one of your foci, if I said that right? It's one of your focus is soccer.
Absolutely. So we started out working in basketball, and we were a basketball company for many years. But very recently, we've always wanted to get into soccer, and I apologize for calling it soccer for your international fans. But one of our board members said that the top three sports in the world are soccer, and soccer, and we have definitely found that out very recently. I
like him a lot.
So we made a big splash in soccer in the last year. We sort of got into sort of a league-wide partners of both the English Premier League and Major League Soccer in the U.S. And so we're super excited, and we're going pretty hard into soccer. And it's been
what do you do? What are you doing?
So I think we do a lot of things in the sports space. So I think one of the things you can think about it is there's, people historically people watch games with their eyes, they understand it, and then they sort of create content, whether it's a reporter in the old days who went and watched a game, understood it, wrote a story, and then distributed it to people. And so TV came along, and there was things like video where a person went with a video camera and then somebody edited it and told a story. I think for us, there's the watching, the understanding, and the creating is now, we have sort of three parts that are done by AI. So watching is what we call player tracking or ball tracking, where we have all these cameras in basketball and soccer stadiums where a machine can tell you, like, this is Raheem Sterling and this is Marcus Rashford, or this is Carlos Vela, and this is where he's standing, and this is how they're moving, and this is where the ball is, and just gets the positional locations of all the players, their identities, and the ball, at 25 frames a second for every single game. So
okay, but my brain does that. So you're not impressing me yet. Go on.
That's right. So then
I don't need AI to tell me who my favorite player is, where he's standing, whether or not he has the ball.
That's right. And that's the biggest thing, is that it was recorded, and people were recording all this locational. A person could watch it, but they can't write it all down. But it was recorded, and it was pretty useless because the people said, I have a big pile of numbers that I can't do much with. So we came around and said, we're going to turn that into things that have meaning. So we can turn all this data, and we call it semantics. So we can turn it into the understanding of what previously only a human could do. It's like, that's a pick and roll. That's a blitz defense. This is a between the lines pass. This is a progression, a build-up, organization, transition defense in the different sports. And we were starting to create words out of these numbers that everybody in the sports landscape started to understand. And then we started working with teams and leagues across the world. And the third part is creation. And we said, well, if a machine can understand, it can also create. And not only did we sort of start creating content, we could say a machine understands the video, and so it can put information, it can put probabilities or names or explosions or characters into a video, basically add special effects into video completely automatically. And so we basically do three things. We sort of watch the game with machines, we understand the game with machines, and we create, at this point, augmented content for these leagues.
So your experience could very easily translate into a completely different fan user experience. You could end up watching a game that, with your technology, someone else sitting at home would not see the game that I'm watching via your AI augmented transmission.
Exactly. And I think one of the biggest things that we are trying to do is the fact that, everybody wants what they want, when they want, how they want it. And the world's just getting better and better at delivering it. And so when you talk about content, when you look at even the radio, it's like you sort of, back in the day, you go to a radio station, you like a song, you hope they play it, 2 hours later. Right. And then sort of things start to become digital, and then machines start understanding it. And right now, nobody listens to it that way. In fact, whether it's a music service or podcasts, like you basically build up what you listen to personally. And this is true whether it's content on the web or whether it's music or whether it's photos. There's lots of things that people experience in very, very different ways. Sports is this one last thing where it's like everybody gets to see the exact same thing, whether you're a person who's been rooting for a team for 30 years or it's your first game watching, or if you're a person who's into data or fun, like regardless of who you are and what your life is, it's the same content for everyone. And the only way you sort of really scale personalization is to have a machine understand it and give everybody something different. And so
wait,
I
know exactly where Neil is going to go now.
Just wait.
Go for it. Go for it.
I don't understand what you're talking about. I pay good money to see Gary O'Reilly perform on a soccer field.
Let me think forward here. Linear TV is getting pushed over the edge by COVID plus everything else that's going on right now. We all want our own content universe, Neil, specific to us. The sort of, I get what I want when I want it.
Explain to me I don't understand the product.
I think that's what Neil is saying is you got to give, and I think many of our listeners right now are having the exact same response, which is, can you please paint for us a couple of user experience examples that make this a worthwhile experience for me to be interested in? I think that's what he's really saying.
Thank you, Chuck.
Let's go from the simple to various. So one is sort of a new fan, and sometimes even experienced fans, might not even know who the players are, right? And so just having Gary's name over his head while he's playing, it's like, oh, that's Gary.
Okay, right? So these right now you're describing Google Glasses. Okay, go on.
Basically, like you make all the video like that, and somebody who's watching a game, and maybe you can't read their jersey, you don't know who they are, or you're a new fan, you might only know who the stars are. You might only want to see who are the stars, like Gary, and like put that over their head and float them over their head, so I know who they are.
Plus, in games where they have helmets like football, you would
that's even better.
You have to know their number or their body shape. Okay, go on.
In the UK who are like, their job is to watch all Premier League matches all day, and they're like, I don't know who number 8 for Huddersfield is, and I wish I could because I had to do a story about them. And so that simple thing just makes everybody way more educated about, who's actually playing, and knowing when you're having a piece of content, knowing who the characters in the story are kind of important. And right now that's a hard thing to do. And now the reason you might want to personalize that is maybe some people know all of them. Some people only want to know a few of them. Some people might want to only know the ones who are on their fantasy team. So just even knowing who people are is a value add, because that's such a big deal for somebody coming into a sport or getting to learn a sport a lot more. So that's level 1. Like, we can just tell you like who the characters in the show are.
Right.
Then level 2 is like describing the conflict of the show. So in basketball, like there's these two people are trying to score, and basically the fight is over the probability of the ball going into the basket based on all the different things you are. Like, well, we can float these probabilities over people's heads. So if you're a data geek, you might love to see all these probabilities floating over these heads, but somebody who isn't might not want that. So you can turn that on for yourself, and somebody who's like, I don't want these numbers, like, turn that off.
What you're saying is, if I'm dribbling the ball, there are different parts of the court where I have a better field goal percentage than others, and you can watch that.
You can watch that in real time. Come on.
Okay, so keep going.
And so somebody just like, and then the third person, like, you know what? Like, I watch sports just to have a lot of fun. I'm on Snapchat, I'm on Instagram. It's like, why isn't it that every time somebody dunks a basketball, there's an explosion or lightning hitting the backboard? It's like, well, we can do that, and we can have all kinds of fun stuff that like, NBA Jam effects and all kinds of cool special.
Yeah, but will Pikachu show up? That's we.
We have many.
It will do if there's a Pokemon movie coming out. That it's going to.
We need some augmented Pikachu. That's what.
Oh my God! There. I just realized that, Gary. But that's amazing,
Chuck. So now, who gets to monetize this?
Exactly.
But right? I still want. He just gave me level 2. Give me level 3 now.
All right. Buckle up.
Buckle up.
Well, can I give my level 3? Can I give my level 3? Because I'm sure that you might be able to do this. Okay, so one of the things that I really like when I watch Amazon is the fact that while I'm watching a scene, I can find out everything about that actor. That actor, I can actually either pause the scene, or in real time while I'm watching it, I can find out other stuff they've been in. I can look at their resume. I can see how they got this job.
Because when you're watching movies on Prime.
Yeah, when I'm watching movies on Prime. And I at first thought that was kind of stupid, to be honest, because I'm used to watching television a very specific way. But then after like 2 or 3 experiences doing it, I find myself looking for that information.
You're addicted.
I'm pulling up. Who is this? What else have they done? What did it? Because
you can't wait till the damn movie ends.
I can't. And honestly, what you just said, Neil, is why I thought it was a stupid idea. I'm like, why can't you wait till it? But
just wait till the damn movie. Rajiv, give me level 3. Forget Chuck. Give me level 3.
Wait, couldn't that be a level 3?
Right. Chuck's right. Chuck's right in the sense, like, what we are doing is basically X-ray supercharged for sports. Like, really, that's what we're doing, right? There's another, which is like, I want to understand the game more, right? Like, you always basically. So in basketball, like, we can draw the play diagram under the players as it happens. In soccer.
By the way, let me just interject real quickly there. I don't think it was until John Madden, when he became a sportscaster, that game was ever unpacked by any sportscaster,
because he was the coach. He was an actual coach.
And he empowered you to pay attention to players that never otherwise got anybody's attention.
Which, by the way,
center doing after they hiked? What was the first blocking person? And he opened this hole and he came through and and it's wow. The whole game was transformed for me hearing him comment.
And I got to tell you, Neil, I am convinced, even though NFL will never say this, I am convinced that is a huge reason why football became the number one sport in America. Because after John Madden started doing that every single analyst started doing that. And then the NFL, not the NFL, the network started hiring former players to become the color analysts. And they all started doing the same thing. And as a result, you had a much deeper insight into the game.
Okay, so now Rajiv, you're doing this with AI.
Exactly, because I think, John Madden is exactly right, because John Madden explained a very complicated game to a lot of people, and that brought them into that universe, right? So, for example, if we're watching TV shows, if I'm watching like a detective show or a romance, like I know the plot, I know the characters, I know what's supposed to happen. Like for a person watching a sporting event, unless you played the game or you don't really understand it. And for games like basketball and soccer that are more continuous, you don't have a lot of breaks to sort of explain a lot of the strategic elements. And so for us, when we
baseball, you have tons of breaks. Baseball.
Don't you go there again.
It's like,
hey, can you put some explosions in baseball, please? Please.
Or statistical chance that the base will blow up when you step on it. Right?
Rajiv, so
for you, I'll look into that. In soccer, we can draw soccer's so geometric. There are these lines and there's formations and overloads and all these things that you can point out that, and Gary knows, like so much of soccer happens outside the ball that people just don't get.
And Rajiv, to this day, I still don't understand offsides, just so you know, between you and me.
You can explain that by drawing a line that explains what offside is to people. It's like, wait, there's this line, right?
They keep changing the rules, Neil. So if you don't feel that you understand it, just join everybody else.
That's very kind of you. Yeah. Okay.
So Rajiv, someone is going to monetize this, because as a viewer, I'm sat there, and as a viewer, they know everything about me. If I want a beer, if I want nachos, if I want a taco, if I want a burger, if I want to take a plane ride, if I want to buy ice cream or whatever it is. So while I'm sat there, all of a sudden, all of my favorite things are going to explode in the soccer goal or come out of the hoop. And
it's the Powerade power dunk of the quarter.
And Chuck's auditioning for the voiceover, which is brilliant.
And now.
So who gets to monetize this? You, the teams, the athletes, the league, or all of the above?
Hey, why can't we all eat, Rajiv? Why can't we all get a little piece of this pie?
Yeah. Why not?
In the long run, like, it's a matter of how we get there, right? I think so. I think, the sports landscape is changing significantly. I think, that the way it's been delivered through linear TV into a television is going to change from being, to delivered over the internet into interactive personal devices.
Yes.
And I think you will see that same transition as you have seen, let's say the music industry or some other, like the other kinds of video industries that are not sports change, where everybody in the ecosystem makes money in new ways as the distribution mechanism.
Yeah, but Rajiv, they were biting and kicking and screaming in the transition. That was a bloody transition.
I think sports will be the same. I think they will. They will. But I think, like, in the end, you have sort of scientifically, you have to go back down to first principles in the sense of, like, there is a very competitive market for people's attention. And it's much more competitive now than it ever was. When I was a kid, I would spend from like Friday night until Sunday night watching nothing but sports, because that, I was in the middle of Wisconsin. I grew up in the middle of Wisconsin. I was there. I watched it. But now it's like there's so much good stuff to spend your time on, like the StarTalk podcast and many other things where you have to fight.
Thanks for the plug. That was very, very nice of you.
But it's true, right?
Can you please add some explosions to our podcast?
I mean, I think of it like the world is much more competitive and and it's a lot better for me as a consumer. Like I'm a science geek, so I love sci-fi shows. So it's like, for me, like when Next Generation came back, there was like one show a week that I would live on. But now, if I look at all these, whether it's podcasts or whether
you binge it, just binge it.
I can spend my whole life doing nothing but sci-fi, and I can spend my whole life watching nothing but robots and explosions and spaceships, and it's amazing because the world is much, much more competitive, and I think sports will have to go there. Sports basically had it, and I'm a big fan.
Okay, so who pulled you out of your parents' basement? Somebody got you. Somebody said you need a life.
Yeah. By the way, what was her name?
No, I'm still in the basement. I'm just watching different stuff.
Excellent answer.
We got to close that segment, but in a third segment, Rajiv, if you can hang out, it's when Gary, Chuck, and I just sort of chew the fat, and you sound like a good fat chewer. You can just join us where we unscripted. We just kind of go at it.
That's great.
Let's do it. When we come back, more StarTalk Sports Edition, AI. StarTalk, we're back for the third and final segment. StarTalk Sports Edition, AI. I've got Rajiv Maheshwaran. Help me there.
Yeah, Maheshwaran, but it's getting better all the time.
Okay, Maheshwaran, thank you.
I'm methodically approaching my name.
Thank you. And you and all the Maheshwarans in Wisconsin, where you're from. Right. Yes, that's truly the long lineage of Maheshwarans in the Midwest.
That's right. Wausau, Wisconsin.
So are your parents from Wisconsin as well?
No, I grew up in Sri Lanka, which is a tiny island near India, for those who don't know. But
can I tell you one of the main reasons why I know Sri Lanka is because that's where Arthur C. Clarke hung out.
You know, Arthur C. Clarke, I know that he almost ran me over with his car once. I think that's the closest I get.
Really? Okay.
Is that what we call a brush with fame?
No, it's a brush with death.
Is. Yeah.
It's a brush with death.
All right.
But then from there we moved from Sri Lanka to Wisconsin. So from a tropical island to Wisconsin. I used to make a joke that I could handle any temperature except room temperature. And then I moved
that's funny.
I moved to LA, and then I've got room temperature coverage.
That's room temperature all the way in LA. So we're just gonna choose some fad. This is where we just shoot the shit. I'm just wondering, Rajiv, are you really transforming our experience? Are you the birth of something that in 20 years we'll look back on and say, I remember when?
Absolutely. I think I use that both internally and externally a lot. I think we would like to be the birth of it. I think that we would like to be the birth, and we're doing everything in our power to make it so that, like, remember when people used to say, remember when we all used to watch the same game the same way? That seems crazy. And but
wait, but sports is still event television.
Yes,
no one DVRs their football game. Okay, that just doesn't happen, really.
No, it's true. So there's both live and non-live. I think there's two things in terms of personalization. In live, everybody can watch a live game in different ways, and even the numbers show that not everyone watches 100% of a game, right? Like,
right.
And so it's like everybody's watching different subsets of a game. So even
right, but before we broke, you said that one manifestation of your company's inventiveness is to have you'll have your own headset, so that it's a very personal, private experience because it will know what you need and want from the game that you're watching. However, isn't it true that sports is more communal?
Absolutely. So I think one of the things that we're going to do is, like, the first thing we're doing is the one way to personalize it, have everybody have a different visual experience that's tailored to what exactly you want to see. But the next step is, shared experience. So if you're just going to have a different visual experience, why can't I create that for myself? Why can't I share it with, the next step is, why can't I share that visual experience with some of my friends or many of my.
So what you end up doing is kind of like Spotifying sports in such a way that you're creating or curating the visual experience, and then you're inviting other people into a community to share the
listening to your playlist.
Right. They're kind of listening to your playlist while watching the game with you, which, by the way, already happens on Twitter during live events now. Yep. You have these small groups that pop up, and they're talking to one another, and they're sharing memes, and they're showing replayed videos and things.
That's Chuck during the Oscars. Okay, Chuck is like 1,000 tweet comes out of Chuck's panel from in the Oscars. Right? What was she wearing? What was he doing? What did he say that? Yeah. Did he really?
Where's Janet Jackson when you need her? Anyway.
Oh dear. This is a sports show, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, Rajiv, okay, we are talking about being on the cusp of a new dawn, a new age in the way that we consume. But you guys don't sit on your laurels. You go again. So are we into voice activation? Are we into touchscreen? Are we into a 360-degree soundscape? Can you tell us all your IP?
Well, I think that you don't want to go too far ahead. I think you want to do is, I think we're already sort of pushing the envelope quite a bit. And I think we do find that, like, we have to sort of stay with the pace which the world is willing to change. But I think, like, you don't want to go too far away from a core experience in terms of watching. And I think one of the biggest things to happen in the world is that everybody has these rectangles that they carry around with them. And some of them are small, medium, and large, but they're all these rectangles, and you can touch them and you can interact with them. And it's fundamentally changed the way people interact with computing and with content. And so for us, people are used to have the ability to be active. And so interactivity, being able to touch and interact with video is going to be a big thing. I think we've actually already built some prototypes where we can show what's possible. We're just waiting for the world to catch up a little bit, because we're waiting for the world, more of the video to go onto digital than linear.
Yeah.
It's already happening for people under a certain age, but then it happen to the whole world very soon, and that's going to really unleash interactive video.
Is there sufficient bandwidth to move video at the rates you need to accomplish your goals?
Absolutely, because we've already delivered this stuff into the world, so it already exists with lots of our partners, and so we're already doing it.
No, I meant literal bandwidth. I mean, are you going to stream HD, soccer game on a device of someone who's on a mobile platform? I mean, this is real?
This is real. It's already happening.
Okay.
And it's only going to get better and more powerful. So the degree of personalization and the degree of interactivity is only going to grow over time. If you think about it, like the first time somebody streamed a game ever versus what the world is now,
right?
Somebody streamed, a piece of video content to what the world is now. It's like we're on the tip of the.
Okay. So in 5 years, what are we doing?
Oh, in 5 years, everybody sort of just watches games.
Wait, in 5 years, you're the first trillionaire. Okay.
No. Somebody's a trillionaire, but I think we just want to be part of the birth. And I mean, I don't have any assumptions other than like, we would like to move the world forward. Like we want to make a dent, and as big a dent as we can for as long as we can. I think it would be worthwhile if in 5 years, every game everywhere, not just the professional games, but pickup games are watched by machines, understood, edited, augmented, and made interactive for people who care about that, whether that's a super fan or grandma watching my kid, right? I think that's the vision, is that it's not just for the pros, it's going to get cheaper, and every game of everything played everywhere on the planet is going to be edited, augmented, and streamed and watched. And
I think you're right. I think you're right. And here's the only reason why I say that. I know 5 years ago you saw the emergence of individual player profile videos showing up on YouTube, and they were being used by scouts. And what happened was the players themselves, the coaches, started making the content instead of waiting for a scout to say, let me video this guy. They'd be like, no, let me take a video of all the stuff that I do great. I'm going to throw that up on YouTube. And they would put together these compilations. And now it's almost like its own little ESPN now, the way it works. So I could totally see this being the next incarnation.
But I still want to know, give me some details. 5 to 10 years from now, and like the Yankees are in the World Series, let's say, that's not a stretch, of course. What do I experience? So, I
mean, I think what you can do is you imagine, like, I'm take the Clippers because they're one of our, we launched with this augmented view with the Clippers. And so you're at home, the Clippers are on, you turn on your iPad, you come in the middle of the second quarter, the AI basically tells you, here's what's happened in the first quarter and a half of the game. I catch you up at the important highlights. Then I take you to your story. Maybe you're watching the first quarter with your kids, so you watch a mode with a bunch of explosions and characters and things like that. You go to bed. Second half,
and Pikachu. You need Pikachu. Yeah,
you need Pikachu's in there. And then second half, you get on with your buddies, and you're all a bunch of data geeks. So you turn on all the stats and the Madden, not the Madden, but like sort of the
Riley.
The Riley or whoever your favorite, and then Riley, pick your favorite, right? And so you're watching it with your friends, and it's interactive. So maybe you play a bunch of games, and like you say, you're playing a bunch of games by interacting with each other on the screen, by tapping the screen and making things happen. You have a social experience. Then after the game, maybe the next day, or that night, maybe you're like, you watch your kids' highlights from the Y game that she played earlier, and you want to see her highlights. You share that with grandma. Grandma makes some comments on that video. The next day you show it to your kids, like, hey, I've cut up your pickup game with the Clippers game from last night. And you have all these sort of mixing and mashing and sharing. And
so the game is this living data entity.
Yep.
Is that a fair way to describe it?
That's a great way to describe it. I'm gonna take that
That's fine.
Okay. Our lawyers will be in touch. So, just saying, do we have lawyers? Shh, don't tell Rajiv. Do we have lawyers? What I'm hearing is, firstly, this can only improve the baseline of sporting talent and elevate it, because you'll be able to see and then not repeat mistakes and learn from your successes. The other thing, Rajiv, you've talked about stories, your story, the story so far. And now what I'm thinking is, if I want the John Madden character to be my narrator, I dial up that. If I want an NBA superstar to be my narrator, if I want it some guy from the hood, or whichever way, and I want to go cartoon graphics.
Gary, you never came from the hood. Just don't. No. That sentence coming out of your mouth doesn't really work. Sorry.
I am not talking of a personal experience. I'm talking about someone who did.
The hood coming out of the hood.
The hood, yes. So,
however, I got to say, Gary, I wish you did come from the hood, because I would have loved to walk through the hood and just heard somebody say, "I sailed, man."
I'd have turned around and said, "Someone's speaking my language at last." Fabulous. Let's have tea. Okay, Rajiv. So if I've got a coaching mode set up on my viewing,
we literally have a coaching mode. Yeah.
How you really do, right? So if in a soccer game there's a corner and I need to know what percentage in swinger, out swinger, short corner, then I look at the players. Then I can wonder if the first phase will be a counterattack or whether I contain. Then I need my. How far into the weeds can I get with that kind of knowledge? Because I know as the attacking team, I'm never more vulnerable than when I have the ball. So now I am prone to counterattack. Or do I, with this information, load up my big guys because I have an advantage in size and put in corners that are to my advantage? How far away or how close can I get to all of that analysis in real time?
So we have all of that right now. So we basically have that, and the sort of the managers have access to that information to study that before the games. Now, from a fan experience, so we work with the coaches in the NBA and the managers in the Premier League, and they get that for the sort of game prep. Now, does the fan need that degree of analysis? Maybe not all fans are like you, but one day I think fans will get access to that degree of specificity in real time. For us, we're just thinking about what are the first steps we can take to get people just accustomed to the fact that the game can look different than it did for the history of it, since we started broadcasting games on TV. It hasn't really changed that much.
All right, so can we talk some real money here, Rajiv? Okay. Let's get into some real money here. How do we turn this into a gambling thing, man?
Yeah,
because that's where the dollars are.
That's where it's going to happen.
I think that if you think about it, gambling was the first way people sort of personalized the viewing experience, right? Somebody basically said, like, I care differently about this game than somebody else. Fantasy sports took that to a very degree. Like I have a very different caring about the set of players than some other person, because we have different incentives. So gambling was one of the ways, is like saying I want to care more, and I want to care more in a very different way than.
But just to be clear, so that I'm up to speed in case anyone else needs to be, but in fantasy sports, as I understand it, the performance of your players tracks their actual performance in the actual world.
Yes.
And if they get injured, your player got injured.
You might be watching a game where two players on team A are on your team and one player from team B is on your team, and there's three players from team B who's on your opponent's team, and so you have a very unique caring about that.
It's a completely different thing, right?
Yeah, it's a completely different thing, but it's very popular, and it's our people saying I want to care about this game in a different way than people next to me. And so imagine you have a visual experience where the visual just tells you this is what you care about, and the presentation of the game is going to reflect what you care about, and not what the next person, what Chuck cares about, or Gary cares about, and we could all, and also maybe all of us are in a room and we want to watch this game together, and we all decide we're each going to pick a player or two and have a fun little game amongst ourselves. Maybe we want each of our heads floating over the player to know whether I should root for that or not. And so it's just, gambling is a way of basically saying, look, I want the experience to be better. I'm going to bet to sort of care more about it, but then I'm also differentiating from other people who made different bets. And so
it's not just whether it's better, it's, yes, implicit is better, but more specifically, you're more engaged.
Right.
There's reasons to get deeper in.
There's a stronger
and to
connection
care
to the
about-
fan.
It's like going to the racetrack.
Exactly.
And if someone hands you a ticket for the bet, you're going to be rooting for that horse in that
Right.
race.
Even though you have no real vested interest in the horse.
The horse, you didn't know, but a minute before that, you didn't care.
You didn't care anything. Okay.
Look, I think one of the things, and this is important, is that part of the reason people gamble is like the raw content is not good enough. I think like I didn't make a bet before I went and saw Avengers Endgame in the theater because like I don't need to. It's going to be good. I don't think like I'll usually I'm not going to make a bet about StarTalk. It's like I know y'all are going to bring it, and then so but I think with I just need to make it more interesting, and so like it just the fan signaling thing is like I need it to be more compelled, right? And so we can either amplify that whatever compels you in a very unique way, or we can find interactivity that helps you gamify in lots of different ways to make it more compelling for however much time and what form of time you're willing to give.
By the way, I lost a mortgage payment on Thanos.
The only issue I think will occur.
It was a good bet, 1 in 14 million. It was a good bet.
So this reminds me, just to close with some reflections here. Baseball, was it in the 1970s? There was some episode where Major League Baseball said people are too bored with the sport. And so they started adding bells and whistles. They would have like contests between the innings, where the fans would, if you go, I don't only know Yankee Stadium better than other stadiums, but between innings, there's like a subway race, and it's all on the video screen, and they race the B train against the D train against the 4 train, and it's stupid, but people get into it, right? And they have a caps, and they move the ball around under the caps, and people are betting on it in between. And I'm thinking to myself, this is an early attempt to do exactly what you're trying to do.
Yep.
And it's early, and to me, it was always clumsy what these were. But if you tune it and you make it sharp, you make it intelligent in the way AI is expected to be, there's no stopping what you've got brewing there.
You're exactly right. I think they were just doing what they were doing with the limits that they have. What AI has done is remove those limits and saying, what can you imagine? If you can imagine, I can make it happen.
And so when you're a trillionaire, we get 10% of what you're okay.
I'll make that same deal vice versa when you're
deal. So Rajiv, thanks for doing this. And when you get more developments, it'd be great to have you back on and just check up on how it's going.
Absolutely. I'd love to.
Totally see that. Gary, always good to have you there.
Pleasure, my friend. You
bring athletic authenticity to these conversations, just so you know.
Very kind of you to say.
And unlike me or Chuck, you
That's damned by faint praise. Thank you.
There you go. Chuck, always good to have you.
A pleasure.
This has been StarTalk Sports Edition AI. I want to thank Rajiv and Noah for being our special guests today, fully and continuing to explore the role of AI in our future, the future of sports. Signing off, Neil deGrasse Tyson, your personal astrophysicist. Keep looking up.